Scottish folk and fairy tales. Fiddler's Well. The path rises by a kind of natural stair to the top of the precipice and continues to ascend till it reaches a sort of limpid water which comes gushing out of the side of a bank covered with moss and daisies, and which for more than a century has been known to the townspeople by the name of the Fiddler's Well. Its waters are said to be medicinal, and there is a pretty tradition still exacent of the circumstance through which their virtues were first come to be discovered, and to which the spring owes its name. Two men of Cromarty, who were much attached to each other, were seized at nearly the same time by consumption. In one of in in one, the progress of the disease was rapid, and he died in 2 short months after he was attacked by it, while the other, though wasted away to almost a shadow, yet strength enough was left to follow the corpse of his companion to his grave. The name of the survivor was Fiddler, a name still common among the seafaring men of the town. On the evening of the internment, he felt oppressed and unhappy, and his imagination was haunted by thousands of feverish shapes of open graves with bones mouldering around their edges, and coffins with lids displaced. And after he had fallen asleep, the images, which were still the same, became more ghastly and terrible. Toward the morning, however, they had all vanished, and he dreamt that he was walking alone by the seashore in a clear, beautiful day of the summer. Suddenly he thought some person had stepped up behind him and whispered in his ear, in the voice of it was the voice of his deceased companion. "Go on, Willie. I shall meet you at the Stormy." There was a rock in the neighborhood of Fiddler's Well, so called, from the violence of which the sea beats against it and the wind blows strongly on the east. On hearing the voice, he turned around, and seeing no one, he went on, as he thought, to the place named in hope of meeting his friend, and sat down on a bank to wait for his coming. But he waited long, lonely and dejected, and then remembering that he for whom he had waited was dead, he burst into tears. At this moment, a large field bee came humming from the west and began to fly round his head. He raised his hand to brush it away. It widened its circle, and then it came humming into his ear as before. He raised his hand at a second time, but the bee would not be scared off. It hummed ceaselessly round and round him, till at length its murmuring seemed to fashion into words, articulated the voice of his deceased companion. "Dig, Willie, and drink," it said. "Dig, Willie, and drink." He accordingly sat himself down to dig, and no sooner had he torn the sod out of the bank than a spring of clear water gushed from the hollow, and the bee, taking a wider circle and humming in the voice of triumph, seemed to emulate the sound of distant trumpet, flew away. He looked after it, but as he looked at the images of his dream, they began to mingle with those of the waking world. The scenery of the hill seemed more obscured by a dark cloud, and in the center there glimmered a faint light. The rocks, the sea, the long declivity faded into the clouds, and turning round, he saw only a dark apartment and the faint beams of morning shining in at the window. He rose after digging the well and drank from the water and recovered, and its virtues are still celebrated, for through the water, though it only be simple water, it must be drunk in the morning, and as it gushes from the bank, with its pure air, exercise, and early rising for its auxiliaries, it continues to work cures.